It's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to this edition of Q&A with Coach. We have a viewer who sent me a pretty long question about his struggle with an addiction to pornography. And some of you might think, that's no big deal, but holy crap, this was a big deal for him. So let's read it. I'm going to keep his name anonymous. He didn't ask me to, but I'm going to. He says this, and if you are a believer in God, pray for our brother here. He says, "Hey Ramsey, thank you for reading this email. I'm a karate and kickboxing practitioner. I've been struggling with porn addiction since at a very young age. I was first exposed to that big industry, and it's a massive industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that exploits a lot of people in some pretty horrific ways that we may or may not go into in a bit here. I was exposed to that big industry when I was 7 years old. And as soon as I found out I could replicate what I saw and feel pleasure as well, I started interacting with it. It's been over a decade now. I've made my choice of quitting this problem when I was 13, and many years later, till this very day, I'm always in the same cycle. This addiction has gotten in the way of my relationship with God, my family, friends, and anyone else I interact with, even in martial arts. I skip many training lessons a month because either the day before or the same day, I went so far with this addiction, using it so many times a day, draining my body, my energy, my health, and my soul to the point where I can't stand up from the bed and go to the gym. Wow. I've been living with shame, anger, frustration, and fear. Every day is an agony to me, because I make no progress, and I'm so afraid of quitting and everything and end up in hell." It kind of sounds like you're already in hell, man. You ended up in hell already. We'll talk about hell more in a bit, and what that actually is, and what that means, and what it doesn't mean. I've been trying for so many years to quit this sin, and for the past year, I've been voicing to God all of my fears, problems, and begging him to release this sin from me. I bought a porn blocker, didn't leave home as much in summer since girls usually dress more revealing, and I couldn't look at them in the face. Maybe you should look at them in the face. As one of the problems with pornography is it commodifies women. It presents them as commodities, stuff you can buy and sell as a product for your consumption, rather than as a person. So consider looking women in the eyes and seeing them eye to eye as a fellow human being instead of a commodity. Consider going outside for that reason. Consider talking to women. A big problem a lot of pornography addicts have is that their only interaction with women is a transactional one online through a screen. And that is their only or their main interaction with women. So it's not actually an interaction with a woman. It is an interaction with an illusion, with a work of fiction. People are not commodities. The human soul is not for sale. And pornography violates that. It attempts to violate that very fundamental principle that the human soul is not for sale. The soul of man or woman is the spirit and the body combined. And you cannot violate one without violating the other. And you have probably, sounds like you've indoctrinated yourself with some preachings, like if I'm hard enough on myself, then I will feel enough shame, and I will feel enough guilt to change, and that hasn't worked, has it? Let's read the rest of this question. Maybe we'll find something that does work. So, he says that he won't go outside because he's afraid of seeing girls dressing in a revealing manner, and that's going to trigger some things in his mind, and he can't even look them in the face. I've been praying, trying to train more, changing my diet. I've done so much, but nothing seems to work. I'm dead afraid of living my last day and waking up in hell, away from God that I love, and stay in even deeper agony with even more regrets forever. Once again, you're already in hell. It's time to get out of there. Almost every day I fall asleep watching your videos of Q&A about religion and martial arts as well. You give me so much determination when you speak about God. I've watched many videos like you helping a sambo fighter quit alcoholism and a bullied man forgive his tormentors, how to become more disciplined, and many other videos regarding more problems similar to mine. Those videos of you are the only comfort I have and help me not hate myself so much. This agony is eating me alive. Please, Coach, help me. I love your content and I look up to you. You've helped me so much without even knowing it. Before this email, you didn't even know I existed, yet you have helped me so much more than all the psychologists I've went to. I thank you so much. You've done so much for me, and I'll forever be grateful to you. God bless you, Coach, and thank you so much for reading this email. Some of you might be thinking to yourselves, this man needs a qualified psychologist, not a mixed martial arts coach on the internet talking to him on YouTube. Well, the man asked me a question, so I'm going to answer it. A lot of people think they need a psychologist, and what they really need is to repent and to experience the atonement of Jesus Christ. Yep. He's a believer in Christ, so let's speak in these terms. And atheist friends, you can roll your eyes all you want. That's fine. I love you too. And so does Jesus. So he's going through this issue, and some of you might be thinking, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. He just needs to stop feeling guilty, and that'll solve the problem. Will it, though? The man described himself in a situation where he can't even get out of bed and go train and go to work and do basic stuff because this issue is holding him back that much. That ain't good, man. No matter what you believe or don't believe about God and religion, that ain't good. I mentioned you're already in hell. Mainstream Christianity paints a picture, largely due to Dante's Inferno, of this dichotomy, heaven or hell. When we die, we will either go to heaven to live with God or be thrust down to the fiery pits of hell to get poked in the butt by a red demon with a pitchfork. That's not actually the doctrine that Jesus Christ taught, but it's a popular idea. And I would say it's a gross oversimplification. Hell is any state where we have separated ourselves from the presence of God, where our soul would shrink from before the presence of God. If we are brought before the judgment bar of Christ, and we witness God, the being from whence we came, our Father, and we are his children, and we have lived a life spiting him, kicking aside his commandments and his will, saying, you know what, I'm going to do it my way. I don't care about you, God. How are we going to feel when we try to look our Father in the eye? We won't be able to. We won't be able to look our Heavenly Father in the eye, and we will shrink from before his presence. It's not that he's going to grab us and kick us in the seat of the pants and throw us down into a fiery pit. It's that we will be so ridden with our own guilt that we ourselves will remove ourselves from that situation. We will not be able to abide God. And hell, once again, is any state where we have separated ourselves from God's presence. There are two things that prevent us from being like God. And some of you might be throwing your arms up. That's not mainstream Christianity, being like God. You crazy Mormons think you can be gods and have your own planets. I don't know why you keep saying the your own planet thing, but I want to read a quote, and I want you to guess who said this. The end of life, not the end of our lives, but the end as in means and the end, meaning the purpose. The end or the purpose of life is to be like God, and the soul following God will be like him. Who said that? Multiple choice. Was it Joseph Smith, the Mormon prophet? Was it Brigham Young, the Mormon prophet? Or was it Socrates, the Greek philosopher? It was Socrates, the Greek philosopher. The end of life is to be like God, and the soul following God will be like him. It's not too far off from what Jesus said when he said, "If you love me, keep my commandments." What would Jesus do? Christians often ask themselves. He would choose the right. He would do the right thing. And there are different ways to do the right thing. Sometimes Jesus would exercise reverence for his Father in heaven by throwing over tables in the temple and kicking people out and saying, "Hey, you are not respecting my Father's house." And sometimes he would exercise that reverence by not saying a word. The end of life is to be like God, and the soul following God will be like him. That's the goal. It's not simply to sit on a cloud and play a harp and relax and not experience pain. It's not enough to be good. You've got to be good for something, friends. If you follow Christ, you receive his image in your countenance. Countenance, in the English language, has an archaic meaning from the 1800s, meaning behavior, not just your face, but your behavior. If you follow Christ, you receive his image in your behavior. The soul following God will be like him. Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect, said Jesus Christ. And how? How? By not making any mistakes? Oh, too late for that. We all have. Some of you might have heard this story from this guy struggling with a pornography addiction and throwing your hands up in the air and said, "Well, I don't struggle with that. What a weirdo. And judged him harshly. Some of you might be thinking, I'm struggling with worse. The context in which Jesus said, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father, which is in heaven, is perfect." He talked about how God treats all of his children. The wicked and the just, he sends them both the rain to fall upon their crops. He loves them all, regardless of what they've done, regardless of their sins and iniquities. He loves them all because they are his children. I have 2 children, and for the most part, they're pretty well-behaved kids. Once in a while, they do something pretty disappointing, and guess what? I don't love them any less. And I can't think of anything they could do or say that would make me love them any less. Be disappointed? Be upset? Perhaps. But love? No. The love of a father to a child should be unconditional. And in the case of God, the Father that we should emulate, that we should follow and try to be like, that love is unconditional. That's important to understand. When you've messed up and you've goofed up and you've fallen into a pattern of negative behavior, or a pattern of negative reinforcement for that behavior, because maybe right now there don't seem to be dire enough consequences pulling you out of that. Sometimes we need a kick in the pants. Sometimes we need to be severely humbled, to be pulled out of a pride cycle we don't even realize that we're in. You pray, you have prayed, and you've asked God to take it away from you. Fix me. Yeah, I understand that. You feel like you've struggled all you can, and you want God to take the rest. Take my yoke upon you, said Jesus Christ. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Especially compared to the alternative. The alternative being a separation from God. If we were to give the antithesis of this Socrates quote, if we are living a life where we are not to be like God, then our soul would not follow him and not be like him. The pornography industry is incredibly abusive. A lot of what is published online is, how can I put this? Unspeakable acts of evil. And I'm not just talking about the exploitation of the sexual act on film, which is bad enough as it is. There are so many unethical and evil practices in that industry. Absolutely reprehensible abuses of human rights. People often talk about how slavery ended in America after the Civil War. No, it didn't. The Constitution was amended. Slavery wasn't ended. It was amended. Is it the 13th Amendment, the one on slavery? That slavery shall be abolished except as punishment for a crime. So it's technically still legal in America. It hasn't been abolished. Just legal as punishment to a crime. Now, we don't have chain gangs like we used to usually, but we certainly do have very, very low paid prison workers. That is a thing that happens. But that's not what we're talking about, not prison workers and all of that. There are more slaves alive today on this planet than at any other point in history. There are more slaves today across the world. In the United States, for example, there are more slaves in America alone than there were during the transatlantic slave trade. The major difference is now it's done under the radar. Now it's done on the black market. Now it's done largely for different reasons. Before, it was mostly exploitative labor. Farming cotton, for example, indigo, the cash crops of the day. Now, there are a lot of people, especially young women and children, exploited for sex. And a big part of that is the pornography industry. If you're watching that stuff, you're watching somebody's child who was often kidnapped or groomed and forced into that situation. I absolutely hate when people try to normalize this. When they do things like hashtag sex work is real work. By the sweat of thy brow shalt thou eat bread all the days of thy life. One of the first commandments recorded in the Bible. In other words, do real work. Real work is something that produces something. Notice he didn't say, by exploiting your neighbor shalt thou eat bread all the days of your life. The end of life is to be like God, and the soul following God will be like him. Now, Socrates had some radically different ideas about God and gods than you and I probably do. But I like this translation of this quote a lot, and I agree with it. You mentioned you prayed. What is the purpose of prayer? Is it to change the will of God? No. We can't. It's to align our will with God's will. Yes, we can ask for blessings. Yes, we can ask for help. Sometimes the answer is no. Do you remember when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane and he was about to take upon himself the sins of all the world, of every last man and woman who has ever committed an error? He was about to take upon him the pains of not just a damned soul, but all the damned souls. And he fell on his face and cried out to his Father in heaven, Father, if it be possible, remove this cup from me. But if not, thy will, not mine, be done. He asked for a specific blessing. The answer was no. But he said something much more important. Not my will, but thine be done. When we pray, that needs to be our attitude. To align our will with the Father's. When we live, that needs to be our attitude. Weirdly, one of the main arguments the people in mainstream Christianity have lobbied against the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is our doctrine. I am a child of God, and so are you. That our spirit, just as the Bible teaches, that our spirit is a child of God. And that the Spirit of God whispers to our spirit that we are his children, and if children, then heirs. Heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ, if it so be that we suffer with him, wrote the Apostle Paul in Romans 10. That's in there. Not too unlike what Socrates said, the end of life is to be like God, and the soul following God will be like him. For we see through a glass darkly, wrote the Apostle Paul. For now we know in part, but then we will see in full, and we will see God, and we will be like him, said the Apostle Paul. That is the goal. You have to recognize you are a child of God. And every other person out there, everyone you see on a screen, everybody you see on the street, everybody you might have an inappropriate feeling about in any way, shape, or form, somebody you might hate, somebody you might love, that's your brother, that's your sister, that's your family. As the late great Bruce Lee said, under the heavens, under the sky, there is but one family. In the literal spiritual sense, that is absolutely true. There's no easy answer to an addiction. We establish a behavior, it's easy. And because of the easiness, and because of the instant reward, so it seems, it's easy to keep doing it. If I gave you a simple choice of, would you rather take the magic pill and get six-pack abs instantly with no side effects, or work really hard and sweat and struggle and toil to get those six-pack abs, and then you have to maintain them? Which do you do? The easy way or the hard way? I think a lot of us, maybe most people, would grab that magic pill and take it. I want to look good. I want to look cool. I want the result without all the hard work. But the whole point of this life is the hard work. A lot of people are blithering on about how this universe is a simulation. All these really smart science guys going on about how life is a simulation, the world is a simulation, the universe is a simulation that is apparently orchestrated by some being orders of magnitude beyond us. They're trying to say God without saying God. And that's actually not too far from the truth if we peel away the layers of the sci-fi-esque language and look at it this way. Before we were born on this earth, we lived with God as spirit children, his sons and his daughters, living in his presence. And that is just the best thing, to be in the presence of God. Indescribably good. For there is one that is good, taught Jesus, and that is God alone. And our soul yearns to be there. But we weren't like him. We didn't have the experiences. We didn't meet the requirements. We didn't have a physical body necessary to go through all of the toil, all the sweat and blood and tears, all the work that it takes. And one of those children of God, a certain Lucifer, stood up and he said, you know what? I don't like the idea that you're presenting of sending us to earth to struggle and toil and possibly fail. I like the magic pill. Follow me. Give me the power. Give me the honor. Give me the glory. And I will make sure that not one is lost. Not one. And a third of the host of heavens followed Lucifer. And they were not granted a physical body like you and I. And they roamed the earth as spirits, trying to tempt us. Because misery loves company. They fell short of the presence of God. They removed themselves from the presence of God. by denying his will, by saying, my will, not thine be done. And they're jealous. They're jealous of you, my friend. No matter how lowly you think of yourself, the devil and his angels are jealous of you to an alarming degree. They want what you have. They want that body, and they want to live vicariously through it. They want to puppeteer you any way they can, to have even a semblance, even a vicarious semblance of controlling those hands of yours, of controlling those eyeballs of yours. They want to exploit the bodies of mankind. And because they can't, they want you to do it for them. So the rest of us chose to follow Christ the hard way. Thy will, Father, not mine be done. To come to this earth, to have this simulation experience, if you will, although it's a very real thing. To be tempted, to be tried, to suffer, to bleed, to die eventually. So those two things that prevent us from being like God. We didn't have a body. We do now, but we're going to die. And we need it. We need it to keep progressing. We progressed as far as we could as a spiritual being only. But remember, the spirit and the body is the soul of man. Your body is your mind, is your spirit. Together, that forms the soul of man. You can shape your soul by what we do with the body. Training isn't just about winning fights for me. It is about shaping the soul. Discipline isn't just about getting physical results and physical rewards. Discipline is about being the kind of person it takes to do the right thing at the right time. The second thing that impedes us from being like God, sin. And what is sin? It is acting contrary to God's will. And what is God's will? Love God above all else with all your heart, mind, might, and strength. And love your neighbor as yourself. All of the law and the prophets, as Jesus said, are summarized in those two great commandments. Stop and think about those. It's easy to make big checklists of commandments. Thou shalt do this, thou shalt not do that, etc., etc., etc. And it's good to think about that sometimes. But more importantly, it's important to reflect on those two great commandments. If you're looking at material that exploits the soul of a woman, for example, to the point where you just can't look a real woman in the face out of shame, where you feel like you can't have a conversation with a real person, where you can't get to know the real person, where you can't get to love the real person, where you are living a life devoid of love, love for yourself, love for God, and love for your fellow man and woman. That's rough, man. You know that's rough. The next time you are tempted to look at that filth, to look at that dirt, consider the second great commandment. Am I showing love for this woman? She has a name. She has a mother. She has a father. And she has a Father in heaven who loves her more than is describable. So much so that if she was the only one here to live on this earth, that Christ himself, that God incarnate, still would have fallen on his face in the Garden of Gethsemane and bled at every pore. And taken upon himself all of the suffering of a damned soul, of all the damned souls, just for the hope of saving that one. Because that is what the Good Shepherd does. Do you remember that parable he taught about the 100 sheep? And 99 of them were safe. 99 of them, they were all good. But one wandered away and was lost. Did the Good Shepherd think, forget that one. It's not worth my time. I've got 99 good sheep here that listen to me. They come when they're called and do what they're told. No. He went out into the wilderness, and he did what a good shepherd does. And a shepherd was a very serious profession back in those days. They used to have lions prowling around ancient Israel, you know, wolves as well. Some antagonists against the Bible who aren't super familiar with our modern understanding of history and archaeology think that there were no lions in that part of the world, but lo and behold, yeah, there totally were. So they're out there braving wild beasts, dangers, the elements. And the Good Shepherd does all of this for the one lost sheep. How many stories like that did Jesus tell? Quite a few. Quite a few. Remember the parable about the woman and the coin? She loses a coin. It's valuable. So what does she do? She searches the whole house, cleans up everything, tidies everything, until finally she finds that missing coin, and then she celebrates. The prodigal son. The boy who asked for his inheritance early and went off and squandered it. And his life got so miserable, and he had nothing to eat, and there was a famine in the land. He got a job feeding pigs, and he got jealous of the pigs, because they had better food than he did. He was jealous of actual pig slop, which is saying a lot. That's how low he got. And he said to himself, you know what? It's rough here. I'm going back to my dad, and I won't even beg his forgiveness. I will offer to be a slave in my father's house, because I'm not worthy to be his son. At least the servants there eat better than the pigs here. So he goes back, willing to take the lowest possible station so that he can at least eat and not starve to death. And as soon as his father sees him, sees this long-lost, disobedient son who has done all these wicked things, when he sees him return, he runs out to him, throws his arms around him, puts a ring on his finger, celebrates, tells his servants, kill the fatted calf, let's have a big celebration, let's party, let's eat well tonight to celebrate that my son, who once was dead, is now alive again. There's a redemption arc in this story for you. That's the moral here. These are stories about redemption. I have to believe that the worst among us is redeemable, because if they are not, I am not. That is the whole point of the religion of Christ, is the fact that though your sins may be as scarlet, yet they shall be made white as wool, as the prophet Isaiah wrote in ancient times, when he spoke messianically, prophesying of the coming of Christ. We could throw out tips and tricks to establish habits. It's not enough to break a habit. We need replacement behaviors. And you're trying to do that with martial arts, and that's good. That's great. But apparently it's not enough, because falling into your bad habits seems to take you away from what should be a good replacement behavior. Sounds like you need some accountability in your life. Do you live alone? Do you live with others? If you live alone, maybe you shouldn't. You need some solid people around you, people to push you in the right direction, people to help keep you on track. Have you seen Lord of the Rings or read the books? Or both, better yet? Great story, great story. If you've read the books and you've seen the movie, you might think, hey, Frodo in the movie is not nearly as cool as Frodo in the books. And yet, they're basically the same character. The only difference is, in the books, we're privy to Frodo's stream of consciousness. So we know exactly why he acts the way he does. If you watch the end of the movie, spoiler alert, Frodo, after all of this struggle to bring the One Ring to Mount Doom, to destroy it, to finally destroy this evil once and for all, instead of simply tossing it into the fire, he says no, and decides to keep it. And Sam is brought to tears. No, we came all this way, we did all this. No, just throw it in. But Frodo won't. He can't. And he puts the ring on, and is consumed by it. And we're not privy to his stream of consciousness, to his internal experience, and so it's very easy to look at Frodo and think, Frodo, you big jerk, you ruined it. How dare you? You're the worst, Frodo. You read the books, though, and it's a very different experience. We're inside Frodo's head. We understand the struggle. We understand the power that the One Ring exerts over him. Even a great wizard like Gandalf refused to touch the ring because he knew how dangerous this would be. In the book, the great and noble Faramir, when presented with the ring, he says, if I found that ring lying on the middle of the road, free for the taking, I would not touch it with a 10-foot pole. I would stay as far away from that as possible, because I know what it would do to me. Movie Faramir is quite a bit different, but book Faramir, total Chad, total awesome dude. Be like Faramir, friends. But Frodo has a different task. He is tasked with taking the ring, carrying it to Mount Doom, and it is a burden. It is a heavy burden. And it's his burden alone to carry. Sam helps him. If it weren't for Sam, the quest would have failed so many times. But Frodo has to do it. And he has to make that choice. And in the book, we understand when he gets up to the fires of Mount Doom why he can't throw it in. And we're like, I get it. I get it. If I went through what Frodo went through, I would probably make exactly the same choice. Because I've seen his heart. I get it. He is a person just like me. And a movie can't show us that, not in the same way. It's a great movie, but in that respect, the stream of consciousness is gone. It is very important to put ourselves in the shoes of other people. Every time you see someone, I'm challenging you. Put yourself in their shoes, whether they are your friend, your enemy, the worst person on this planet. Put yourself in their shoes and try to understand them. Try to get it. Especially if it's someone you wildly disagree with. Especially if it's someone you think is an idiot. Try to understand them. Try to understand the why. Why did they make this decision? And under what circumstances would I act the same way? And similarly, if you are struggling with a pornography addiction like our friend who sent in this email to me, put yourself in the shoes of these people on the screen who, for whatever reason, are doing that thing they're doing. And by that I mean, try to understand, try to see the humanity in that person. Don't see them as an object. Don't see them as a good or a service for sale. Don't see them as a transactional relationship. See them as a child of God, just like you. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.